The Secretary of State in Georgia has announced there will be a hand recount of the ballots in Georgia. Now, many people have said this was pre-planned. It's a risk-limiting audit. They were always going to do it. They're just happening to do it now, but it matters. There are a lot of people who believe that computer programs were used to flip the votes, and thus a hand recount will reveal this. In most elections where we've seen a recount, it's only been a few hundred. The most notable, I think, was Bush v. Gore, where it was like 1,200 shift in a recount. So I don't know if this will actually end up doing anything, to be completely honest, but it doesn't matter what my thoughts and opinions are. It matters that it's happening. If you're someone who believes there's widespread fraud or impropriety, you want to see a hand recount. Makes sense. The state is going to do it. I don't see why anyone should be complaining about it. But of course, many Democrats actually are. And they use an absurd analogy that I find quite funny. And they try to do this all the time. First of all, the question is very obvious. If we want transparency and certification of our elections, why would anyone reject transparency and certification of our elections? What I mean by that is Democrats have long said Russia, 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 foreign interference. So how about we go through everything with a fine-tooth comb and make sure we're good? You see, both parties, in my opinion, play games for power. Donald Trump and the Republicans are not complaining about the results where they won. They're complaining about the results where Trump is down. I think if we want to be fair, let's do a hand recount everywhere. Everywhere it's close, at least. And that would include some Republican victories. And guess what? I'm willing to bet Trump supporters are going to say, do it, because they're confident they've won. Democrats should be saying the same thing because it might help them win, but for some reason, they're not. You see how the game is being played. Look, let me put it this way. I think, when Trump won in 2016, he came out and said, I've won. And within a few days, Hillary Clinton conceded. But the Democrats on the left went insane, trying to get the Electoral College not to certify the results, trying to get faithless electors, of which I believe we had a few. Jill Stein calling for a recount. They refused to accept the results of the election. I'm not gonna play a partisan game where I'm like, well, now the Republicans aren't allowed to do it. Now everyone's allowed. We're going to do it. Anyway, we've also got Jim Jordan calling for a full audit of the vote. All of it, I guess. He just tweeted, audit the vote. All right. Does that mean everywhere? I can only assume it does. And I'll tell you this, at this point, do it. By all means. We counted all of these ballots very, very quickly. It took us about, a day to count the in-person ballots. And then it took us several days to count the mail-in ballots. But why not? Why not give it another week just to do it, just to get it done? I should have, I kind of glossed over this, but the left, what they're saying now is, why don't we challenge, investigate whether or not the moon landing happened? We're so smart. Right now, you have 72.3 million people who voted for Donald Trump, probably more, 77 million who have voted for Joe Biden. This is not some argument in an academic setting about what is or isn't. It's literally half the country saying we do not trust the results. We went through the Russiagate investigation for years. I entertained that. I now want us to entertain this. Makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah, well, maybe that's why when they do all their hit pieces on conservatives talking about fraud, they tend to exclude me because I'm not here actually arguing the widespread fraud shifted the election. My argument is very simple. Whether there is or isn't, it would be reasonable to make sure that 72.3 million people do not feel disenfranchised. And if that means we spend some extra time to make sure in our hyper-polarized environment, it means we make sure that everything is good, then we do it. Well, here's what's happening in Georgia. Georgia will recount presidential election ballots by hand as Biden's lead over Trump grows. Now, already, I know there's a lot of people saying this is good news. They're going to sort them by hand, and then they're going to feed them into a machine to tally the counts. So, yeah, if you really care about a hard recount, you might want to tell them not to do that and just write down the numbers on paper and then send those numbers somewhere. I don't know. That's what's being reported. They say Georgia will conduct a statewide recount of ballots cast in the election between President Donald Trump and President-elect Joe Biden. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger said Wednesday, with the margin being so close, it will require a full by-hand recount in each county, Raffensperger said at a press conference. Raffensperger, a Republican, said the state will work with county officials to complete the recount in time to meet its November 20th deadline for certifying statewide election results. It'll take every bit of time we have left for sure. Biden's lead over Trump in Georgia has grown to more than 14,000 votes among nearly 5 million cast, according to NBC News, which has not projected a winner in the Peach State. Raffensperger had previously telegraphed that a recount was likely in the state, which has traditionally voted for Republican presidential nominees. Trump supporters, including GOP Rep. Doug Collins, asked the Georgia official earlier this week for a hand recount. This will help build confidence. It will be an audit, a recount, and a recanvass all at once, Raffensperger said. It will be a heavy lift, but we will work with the counties to get this done in time for our state certification. Good. Because if you got people who are complaining, maybe they won't accept the results no matter what happens, just like the Democrats. Fine. But at least we'll put in a good faith effort to make sure we're taking these claims seriously and going through the vote. Trump, on the day after the November 3rd election, falsely asserted that his campaign had claimed for electoral vote purposes Georgia and other states, with Biden now projected to secure more than 270 electoral votes required to clinch the presidency. Trump and his surrogates have already demanded recounts in states, including Georgia and Washington. My understanding is that he's also filed a lawsuit in Michigan. We know about the lawsuit in Pennsylvania. Trump is moving to stop the certification process. They also have launched a flurry of accusations of electoral fraud without citing evidence. This is a lie. Isn't that insane that CNBC puts a blunt, bald-faced lie right in that story? That's freaky, isn't it? The RNC has said 11,000 people have come forward. They have sworn affidavits. Okay. There is a postal worker who has signed a sworn affidavit saying they were backdating ballots. That is called evidence. It's not proof positive. It is a bit of information that corroborates a claim. Doesn't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, but there is evidence. Does it mean the election results will change? No. Does the evidence mean that it's enough to make a difference for Trump? No. But it does mean we have people who have straight up said, one woman signed an affidavit, sworn under oath, her dead son was listed as having voted. That is evidence. But they're just lying over and over and over again. This is just insane. Trump campaign lawyers have filed lawsuits in multiple key states related to those claims. Many of those cases have already been thrown out by judges. Now, that's true. Many have been thrown out. Trump has refused to concede to Biden and is falsely claiming he won the election. The transition of power to a Biden administration cannot formally begin until the General Services Administration makes an ascertainment of the winner, which it so far has refused to do. Which it has so far refused to do. Well, when we say the media projects a winner, it is tradition more than anything else. The media doesn't call who the winner really is. They look at the numbers. Donald Trump is going to challenge hundreds of thousands of ballots in many states. He has a multi-tiered legal plan, and I think they've been preparing for it. I got to be honest. Listen, I want you to think about something. Just think about this. Also, actually, share this video with people you know to help them get an understanding of what's going on, if you think I do a good job. Under Bush v. Gore, all ballots must be treated the same, right? Okay. I tweeted, isn't it weird how we can count millions of ballots in a day and then we have to stop and spend 3 days counting hundreds of thousands? And all of a sudden I get inundated with these, as Michael Malice likes to call them, midwits. They're just like low information individuals saying, you clearly don't know how elections work. You're so dumb, including Oliver Darcy of CNN, saying your lack of understanding of the process is blah, blah, blah. I didn't say anything about absentee ballots. I literally said, isn't it funny? It is funny, at least to me. We count all these millions of votes and then we got to stop for 3 days to count the absentee ballots. The official explanation is that absentee ballots, when you vote in person, you go through that check and that process to a certain degree. You fill out the vote. The vote's good. They can count it. With absentee, they got to open it, match signatures, and then, verify. It takes longer to count an absentee ballot than an in-person ballot, especially when in-person is being, tallied in the machines in real time. Okay, I didn't say that wasn't the case. I just think it was funny that we were able to go through millions on day one. But you see, therein lies the point with these low information individuals who don't understand how this works, and they're all laughing and gloating. But anyway, I digress. I can rag on those people all day and night. The real issue is that under Bush v. Gore, all ballots must be treated the same. But if we're coming out and saying that it takes 3 days to count hundreds of thousands of absentee ballots versus millions of in-person, they are not being treated the same. They are getting absolutely different treatment. Now, that might not be enough because the official ruling might say that's not unequal treatment. They're both getting some kind of security process, and for all intents and purposes, it's legit. Okay, fine. But the issue is curing, and this is the lawsuit in Pennsylvania. Now, you got, I don't know if I have it pulled up, but Chris Evans took a video from Fox News, and he is the perfect example of like Tweedledee laughing how he thinks he's so smart. I'm so smart. And he doesn't even know what he's talking about. And then he misinforms a whole bunch of people who also don't know what they're talking about. Fox News ran a segment where they said, it was, I think it was John Roberts, I'm not sure. Trump is saying all the legal votes have not been counted and all of the illegal votes have not been excluded. But where they run into a problem is evidence. So far, no evidence. First of all, the RNC has already come out with like a ton of sworn affidavits, and they're making the assertion 11,000 people. 234 pages of accusations. What do you think you get? Someone calls the cop and says, I'd like to report a crime. I watched a guy running out of a building. Well, that's not evidence. You just watched a guy running out of a building with a bunch of money, and running out of a bank with a bunch of money. That's not evidence. Bring me the actual dollar that was stolen. No, that's ridiculous. You report your allegation of fraud, we investigate and try and dig up evidence. Fox News was wrong. But more importantly, the Trump lawsuits in question that could swing this are not about fraud. I kind of feel like Trump is doing this on purpose. He's saying fraud over and over again because then these low information morons are all dancing around laughing like there's no fraud. Meanwhile, Trump's legal team is actually going after disqualifying ballots. And this is a tried and true Trump tactic. I'm not kidding. You go back to when Donald Trump wanted to change the rules on refugee status. What does he do? The day it's supposed to drop this executive order, he tweets something about AOC and the squad going back to the countries they came from or something like that. And then the media was like, oh, Trump's a racist. And then Trump, while they're all distracted, he signs an executive order saying I'm changing what it means to be a refugee. And they fall for it every time. Trump comes out now and he tweets widespread fraud, the radical left in this country and the widespread fraud. And he goes for it. And then the media says it over and over again. And all of these low information leftists are all laughing and giddy and high-fiving each other. He's feeding the media what they want. No evidence of fraud. And then he goes, all right, boys, send in the lawsuit to disqualify those votes. Not for fraud. He's arguing that they were counted improperly and thus are spoiled and can't remain. And that would flip Pennsylvania for Trump. These people are not bright. Man, I'm telling you. Anyway, I digress. Okay, I saw that without evidence. Trump campaign lawyers have filed lawsuits in multiple key states related to those claims. Many of those cases have already been thrown out. They say Raffensperger said at the press conference that at 1 p.m., he will declare the presidential race in his state subject to a risk-limiting audit. We'll count every single piece of paper, every single ballot, every single lawfully cast legal ballot. When a reporter noted that such an audit usually involves just a sample of the ballots rather than the entire body of votes, Raffensperger said, you actually have to do a full hand-by-hand recount of all ballots because the margin is so close. Raffensperger has recently come under fire. Within his own party, Georgia's 2 Republican senators, Loeffler and Perdue, on Monday demanded his resignation. The senators claimed in a joint statement that there have been too many failures in Georgia elections this year, without citing any specific examples. Both senators are closely allied with Trump, likely facing runoff elections in January against their respective Democratic challengers. Well, you know, Jim Jordan comes out, audit the vote. I guess he's saying everywhere, and so be it. Over in Texas, however, Texas Lieutenant Governor offering $1 million for evidence of voter fraud. Is this on purpose? Trump's legal battles right now are not about fraud. They got one going through where there's 529 ballots in Pennsylvania that didn't have addresses on them. And they were counted anyway. Because apparently what the elections tabulators did was they saw there was no address, so they scanned it and the address popped up and they filled it in. Trump's legal team is saying you can't do that. It's a really, really interesting debate. I think they could possibly win. Now, it's going to come down to the judge's interpretation. 529 ballots, I don't believe is going to swing anything for Trump. But how many grains of sand make a heap? If Trump files 100 legal challenges to each pertaining to 500 or so ballots, we're talking about 50,000 ballots being disqualified. And Trump's currently down by like 45. You see the point? If they keep doing this, all of these legal battles, they could whittle away at these ballots and eventually win. The interesting argument, however, was the judge said, what's wrong? Why can't the ballot be counted? Is this really part, that important? What the legal team basically said was, it doesn't matter. What matters is it's a requirement in the election code. And there's a lot of reasons why people would tell you why the election code is why it is. But those are their opinions. We must operate on. If it is within the confines of the code, we must uphold it, period. And therefore, with no address, you're gone. Well, we'll see what happens to those 529 votes. I will say I'm torn, The normalcy bias and the optimism bias in me says that, look, the election's over. We're seeing the media say President-elect Joe Biden over and over again. I'll tell you one of the funniest things. Fox News is spinning in circles, desperately trying to figure out what to say. And I love it. I don't really have that problem. I'll just tell you what's going on. But Fox News doesn't know where the chips are going to fall, right? So they actually had, I can't remember, I think it was Peter Doocy. He's like, President-elect Joe Biden, blah, blah, blah. But also we'll note he hasn't been certified the winner. You just called him president-elect, then said he wasn't certified the winner. They are freaking out. You've got Sandra Smith. She's on America's Newsroom, I believe. And there was this leaked audio where one of the guests was saying, we're going to audit and see what happens. And then she, under her breath, like on a hot mic, goes, what is happening? We called it for Biden already. And it's like, yeah, you did. Doesn't mean anything. You called it. Then you get Laura Ingraham, who's putting on the Nevada poll watcher whistleblower who signed a sworn affidavit saying that a Biden-Harris van was pulling out ballots and signing them or something. Then you have Neil Cavuto of Fox News. When Kayleigh McEnany was giving a press conference on fraud, he cuts away and says, no, I can't allow this. She's lying to you. And then Tucker Carlson passively calls him out by saying you can't just turn away when you're hearing something you don't like. Fox News is fracturing. I think they've got a mainstream bias where they're desperate to be like, we don't want to be the odd people out. You get all these news outlets saying Biden won, it's over. And they're now stuck between, what do we say? Do we say there's fraud? What do we do? I love it. So there's this thread that from a couple journalism professors who are overtly pro-establishment lefties, and they live in bubble world, saying there's no evidence of fraud. The New York Times said no evidence of fraud, and it's just not true. But they say it over and over again, probably because, well, I feel like we're in some kind of counting heads phase. Kind of. We're not necessarily there yet, but Donald Trump recently fired the leadership from the Pentagon and has replaced them with what the media is calling Trump loyalists. Sound like a counting heads phase to you so far? I don't know what happens. I don't know why they're doing it, but it is freaking me out. Who knows what's going to happen? Trump is certainly acting like he's not going to be leaving. He's refusing to concede, and he's fighting these legal battles. Maybe he's acting like he's not leaving because he's still in the process of fighting legal battles to try and win. Okay. But I tell you, man, the media laying it all on so thick, putting out these fake stories saying there's no evidence. And I'm seeing all of these people just eat it up. I mean, look, the first story I brought up where CNBC says with no evidence, it would say they also launched a flurry of accusations of electoral fraud without evidence. What do you think is going on? We have sworn affidavits, but the media is just lying. We have videos. We have clear anomalies. We have more than enough evidence to launch some kind of inquiry or investigation. We have mathematical improbabilities that raise questions. So Benford's law has been used to look at other elections in other countries to claim that there has been impropriety. Well, several of our jurisdictions violate Benford's law as well. Does it mean we launch an investigation? No. But when you add all of these things together, we're looking at a heap of sand. And someone's going to have to explain how it got there. And it may just be this tiny little molehill that people are making a mountain out of. Just still got to investigate it. Well, anyway, This GOP Texas lieutenant governor is offering $1 million for evidence of voter fraud. That is bold. From his campaign. Does he have $1 million to give away? Jeez, dude. Apparently, it's the minimum is $25,000. They say Patrick said he is offering the reward to incentivize, encourage, and reward people who come forward and report voter fraud. Anyone who provides information that ultimately ends in an arrest and final conviction will be paid $25,000 minimum. Okay, so up to $1 million. Perhaps a bunch of people might get $25,000. Project Veritas has also offered $25,000 for tipsters. I'll tell you what's going on, man. It's freaky. You've got
Texas Lieutenant
The Hill
Governor
auto
Dan
reloading and
Patrick
playing
is
audio.
backing
Ignore that. You've got Project Veritas. They get a USPS whistleblower. This guy came out and said fraud, right? He signed a sworn affidavit. The media then came out and claimed he lied. And the money they raised on GoFundMe for this guy, deleted. And GoFundMe said, we've taken it back. The guy's a liar. It is all tribalist ideological insanity. And I'll tell you what, there's no good guys. There's no bad guys. The people on the left and the Democrats, they think they're the good guys. Unfortunately, they're surrounded by low information voters. On the right, you've got people who are fighting against what they say is fraud. They think they're the good guys. And I know a lot of people are probably mad at me saying, Tim, why won't you say that we're the... I'm not playing this game. I'm not playing a game. I'm saying there's clearly evidence. It needs to be investigated. We'll get to the bottom of it. It's not about taking sides. It's about being real. Unfortunately, our news outlets are too scared to talk about what's actually going on. I run the risk of getting banned every video I do following the election. Whatever, if they ban me, then, I'm gone. But I'm going to call it like I see it, and I'm going to call out when I see lies in the media. But man, are they lying like crazy. And it's starting to freak me out. I'll tell you what's really funny, and I mentioned this before, is they did this poll. 80% of Americans think Joe Biden won. Only 13% think that the election isn't over. And I'm like, am I supposed to care about that? Is that their goal? That they want to go to people who might bring this stuff up and say, you're in the minority and you're going to lose? Because I honestly don't care. I've always been the minority of myself. And I'll call it like I see it no matter what. And if I see evidence of impropriety, it doesn't matter if literally every single person says I'm wrong. If I'm looking at something that I see to be evidence, then I'll say it's evidence. I'm reminded, Chris Evans, of Captain America's famous line. It is your duty to plant yourself like a tree and say, no, you move. So literally every single person can scream in my face, there are 5 lights, and I will say, no, there are 4 lights. I think I got that one right. I don't know, whatever. It's from Star Trek, where Captain Picard is he's got 4 lights, and they're torturing him, saying, say 5, say there are 5, and he won't do it. I'm going to tell it like it is. Ain't no person's going to come sit down with me and say, I am not scaring you, but I am scaring you. Okay, dude, just ban me from every platform already, because I'm not going to stop calling it like I see it. We'll see how things play out, as per usual. We'll see how the recount goes in Georgia. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. It is a different channel from this one. Hopefully it'll still be around, but go check it out, and I'll be there at 4. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you all then.